Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Jai. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Kendra.
You wrote 23 and I'm pretty sure it's 24, unless we didn't
We
finish
didn't-
a purport or something.
We didn't finish with the purport. It was very chunky.
Okay, my mistake. All right, well,
All right, I will chant Hari. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Puri Vrajakacharya. Ashtotar Satashri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, welcome everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Friday, September 6th, 2024 in New York. And tonight we're picking up where we left off, which is in the fourth canto, chapter 3, in the middle of the purport to text 23. It was a long purport. Ras Prabhu was reading. And at that time we didn't have the good fortune of Maharaj's company, but tonight we do, thankfully. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'll read the verse in translation again, and then we'll skip down there. We're starting with the purport where it picks up with the phrase, the action of the internal potency. That's where we left off. Unless, Maharaj, you'd like us to start right from the beginning again, since you're here, we'd be happy to do that as well.
No, it's such a large purport. I think you must have covered it well. Just where is the action of the internal? Oh, okay, I see it. Good.
Sattvam vishuddhang vasudeva shabditang yadiyate tatra pumana pavritaha sattve chitasmin bhagavan vasudeva hyathokshajo me namasa vidhiyate. This is Lord Shiva speaking. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. The action of the internal potency is also described in this verse as apavritaha, free from any covering. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His name, His form, His quality, His paraphernalia, etc., being transcendental, are beyond material nature. It is not possible to understand any one of them with the materialistic senses. When the senses are purified for the discharge of pure devotional service, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanang Bhakti Ruchyate, the pure senses can see Krishna without covering. Now, one may inquire that since factually the devotee has the same material existential body, how is it possible that the same materialistic eyes become purified by devotional service? The example, as stated by Lord Chaitanya, is that devotional service cleanses the mirror of the mind. In a clean mirror, one can see one's face very distinctly. Similarly, simply by cleansing the mirror of the mind, one can have a clear conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 8:8, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, by executing one's prescribed duties in devotional service, Chetasa Nanya Gamina, or simply by hearing about God and chanting about Him, If one's mind is always engaged in chanting and hearing and is not allowed to go elsewhere, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed by Lord Chaitanya, by the Bhakti Yoga process, beginning from hearing and chanting, one can cleanse the heart and mind, and thus one can clearly see the face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Recently, I was reading a passage in Lilamrita where Prabhupada is talking about why there's a prescribed quota of japa. And he says it's meant for clearing the mind. And he's saying this again in so many words. He says if one is, he says, Chetasa Nanya Gamina, simply by hearing about God and chanting about him, one's mind is always engaged in chanting, is not allowed to go elsewhere, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I also just recently read how when he visited Caracas, Venezuela, in his closing address to the devotees there, he had only been there once, and it was the last time they would ever see him. And he was stressing on this point that if you just chant Hare Krishna, you don't even have to have knowledge. All you have to do is chant Hare Krishna and associate with devotees, take prasadam. It's a very simple process. He tried to make it as simple as possible. And he says at the end of this purport, very encouragingly, one can clearly see the face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But I like how Prabhupada takes the time to raise this question that since a devotee has the same body, the same eyes, how is it that the same eyes, which are ostensibly material, can become so purified as to actually be able to have spiritual experience, since nothing about Krishna can be apprehended by material senses? And it's another item of good news that by the process of chanting, cultivating the holy name properly, we can become purified in our heart and mind. And that's actually a question I was going to raise for Maharaj. Prabhupada makes the distinction here. Well, he says both heart and mind. I've sometimes understood them to be synonymous, but hopefully you'd like to comment and perhaps you'd like to address that point. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastate Deshtani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Well, they do appear to be synonymous. Usually it's chitta, which can be consciousness, mind, heart. I don't see a flag for a clear distinction here. The Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam, that Vasudeva appears in Vasudeva, or from Vasudeva, pure consciousness. And as you said, Prabhupada makes it so simple, that if we just chant Hare Krishna, then pure consciousness will come and we'll be able to see Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Panchatattva Prabhu quotes Yato Yato Nischalati Manas Chanchalamas Tatastato Niyam Yaitad Atmanyeva Vashangnayat. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. Thank you.
You picked up on not allowed to go anywhere. Mind should not be allowed to go anywhere else. So that the chanting process is the ideal process. If the mind is fixed on the chanting, then it's not allowed to go anywhere else. Otherwise, just trying to stop the mind will be difficult business.
Yeah. I found it interesting. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has sizable purport for this verse. And he, on Wednesday, when you weren't here, we were discussing a little bit of his extensive deconstruction of the term Vasudev and Vasudev. How it's very interesting how he really gets in there and says this is what Vasudev means, being the pure state of consciousness in which Krishna appears, also from Vasudev, his father. But here's where, as he often does, he gives the subtext for Lord Shiva's words. He says, at that time, meaning at the time of the fracas with Daksha, at that time I was serving the Lord. Because of uninterrupted service to the Lord, I did not have external awareness. Tell me if that is a fault on my part. Hare Krishna. So, Panchatattva Prabhu, since you very helpfully posted that verse, we'd like to know if you could read our next verse, which is 24.
Actually, I have a question which might sound a little bit speculative about that verse from Bhagavad Gita, well-known verse, and one of the first ones you get to memorize when you're in the Bhakti program. 626. The word self is capitalized in the text. And Prabhupada's purport is kind of short. Can you read this as bringing the mind back under the control of Krishna?
Sure. Lots of times the capitalization is an editorial choice, but sometimes Prabhupada himself has made that choice. Sometimes we don't know. But certainly, Atmanyeva Vashamnayet, it should be brought under the control of Krishna. Ultimately, I'm not able to control my mind. I'm not able to control my senses. I'm not able to control anything. Everything depends on my surrendering to Krishna. And when I surrender to Krishna, then he'll make it possible for my mind to be controlled, my senses to be controlled. Otherwise, just trying to stop the mind and senses. What is that in fourth canto? Sanat Kumar. Yadpada Padapallava Palasha Vilasha Bhaktya. To stop the senses, to stop the waves of desire, will be very difficult. But for one who's fixed his mind on the lotus petal feet of the toes of the lotus petal feet of the Lord, then it becomes possible.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you. Actually, I realized we have another paragraph in this purport.
Yes.
Want to keep reading again, Prabhu? Should I?
I'll read the last paragraph here. Lord Shiva said that since his heart was always filled with the conception of Vasudev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of the Supreme Lord's presence within his mind and heart. He was always offering obeisances unto that Supreme Godhead. In other words, Lord Shiva is always in trance, samadhi. This samadhi is not under the control of the devotee. It is under the control of Vasudeva, for the entire internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead acts under his order. Of course, the material energy also acts by his order, but his direct will is specifically executed through the spiritual energy. Thus, by his spiritual energy, he reveals himself. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:6, Sambhavam Yatma Maya Ya. Atma Maya Ya means internal potency. By his sweet will, he reveals himself by his internal potency, being satisfied by the transcendental loving service of the devotee. The devotee never commands, my dear Lord, please come here so that I can see you. It is not the position of the devotee to command the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come before him or to dance before him. There are many so-called devotees who command the Lord to come before them dancing. The Lord, however, is not subject to anyone's command. But if he is satisfied by one's pure devotional activities, he reveals himself. Therefore, a meaningful word in this verse is adhokshaja, for it indicates that the activities of our material senses will fail to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by the attempt of one's speculative mind. But if one desires, he can subdue all the material activities of his senses, and the Lord, by manifesting his spiritual energy, can reveal himself to the pure devotee. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself to the pure devotee, the devotee has no other duty than to offer him respectful obeisances. The Absolute Truth reveals himself to the devotee in his form. He is not formless. Vasudeva is not formless, for it is stated in this verse that as soon as the Lord reveals himself, the devotee offers his obeisances. Obeisances are offered to a person, not to anything impersonal. One should not accept the Mayavada interpretation that Vasudeva is impersonal. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, prapadyate, one surrenders. One surrenders to a person, not to impersonal non-duality. Whenever there is a question of surrendering or offering obeisances, there must be an object of surrender or obeisances. Hare Krishna. I like this samadhi is not under the control of the devotee, is under the control of Vasudeva. And then he quotes Sambhavam Yat Maya Ya, or I am not, in another verse, I do not manifest myself to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I'm covered by my internal potency. But that's in charge, that Krishna is in charge of that. And I would truly like to hear what Maharaj has to say about that, because it's what is it? Prabhupada said one time in a lecture in New Vrindavan in 1969, he was saying that, I'll paraphrase, he is saying that we are very tiny. Krishna is in charge of everything. And Krishna encouraged Arjuna, saying, Nimittamatram bhava savyasachin. And so, for our part, speaking of himself and the members of ISKCON, that we see that the movement is expanding, Krishna is giving all facilities. We have no power. We are simply trying to carry out the duty. If we do that, then it is everything. There is no problem. So we have our part to play, and Krishna has his part to play, which is very good news, because we cannot presume to do anything, to imagine, speculate, fancifully, do anything with our mind and senses to actually achieve darshan or any experience of the Supreme Lord, that's in Krishna's court. And he waits until he sees the sincerity on the part of the devotee. Then he reveals himself. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, love to hear from you.
Thank you. That yes, this action of the internal energy. At first, I'm thinking of nimitta matra bhavasavyasachi. You just surrender, and I'll make you my agent. You'll become. Prabhupada points out that if a man cuts someone with a knife, or whatever the weapon may be, and the knife is not responsible, it's the person who's holding the knife. So the devotee is not subject to karmic reactions because everything's actually done by Krishna through the devotee. So there's that perspective that we surrender to Krishna, and he engages us in a particular service under the action of his internal energy, and there we are. Devotional service itself is a manifestation of the internal energy, and we're engaged in that way. But here it's interesting that Lord Shiva presents himself as essentially being swept up in the internal energy, or swept up by the internal energy. That don't look at me, it wasn't my fault that I didn't get up. I was just carried away by the internal energy. What could I do? And then we're reminded of that aspect of Krishna's pastimes where the devotees are just swept up by the internal energy, and they're essentially helpless. They've surrendered, and now Krishna is going to, or the internal energy itself is going to engage them in extraordinary ways. And that we see in the pastimes of Vrindavan, where the internal energy, even by Krishna's permission, controls Krishna. Krishna himself forgets himself. Krishna becomes bewildered. Krishna does so many things in response to the internal energy. In the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it sometimes appears that we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being swept away by the internal energy. He thinks that the sand dune, the Chataka Parvat in Puri is Govardhan. He, in so many ways, loses ordinary consciousness and even gets battered, you could say, by the internal energy. His emotions are fighting within him, and he's being just, you could say, lost in the internal energy, and in the mood of the gopis, especially in Srimati Radharani, who are, what can they do? They're carried away by the internal energy, and sometimes it appears painful, sometimes it appears blissful, but they have no place else to go. They're completely under the control of Krishna or Krishna's internal energy. So for Lord Shiva to be swept away by the material energy, spiritual energy, internal energy, so that he's just absorbed in samadhi and then loses cognizance of what's going on around him, is not not unusual for the devotees who are in the absorbed in the higher levels of Krishna consciousness. And even the devotees of our Hare Krishna movement become absorbed in their activities. They become absorbed in the kirtan. They become absorbed in distributing books. They become absorbed in reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and they forget we're supposed to eat. We're supposed to pace ourselves. They just become carried away, and sometimes do extraordinary things by the grace of the internal energy. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. Panchatattva Prabhu comments here, even the Mayavadi sannyasis bow down to each other, saying Namo Narayana. Otherwise, where are their obeisances? I had a question. There's part of the purport that Prabhupada devotes at least this paragraph, and it seems like something I had heard before that he's critical of, the idea that simply by one's command, you can command Krishna to come before you dancing. It seems like he's quoting someone there that he's not all appreciative of, and I thought maybe you'd know where that comes from.
No, I know. I noted the same thing, that this isn't the first time that Prabhupada's criticizing this view. So I reached the same presumption that somebody out there is putting this out, whether it's some group or some individual. They must be putting out this offensive notion, which Prabhupada responds to here.
Yeah. And Panchatattva has a question. He says, can we read this seminal verse as also advice to Sati that, quote, you should become absorbed in Krishna consciousness in this way?
Sure. Sati and the readers.
Mm. 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 Thank you, Maharaj. So, Panchatattva Prabhu, if you're ready, you can read text number 24.
Tateneriksha napitapi dehakrid dakshamamadvit padanuvrataschaye yovisvasrig yagyagatang varorumang anagasang durvachasakarotira. Therefore you should not see your father, although he is the giver of your body, because he and his followers are envious of me. Because of this envy, O most worshipful one, he has insulted me with cruel words, although I am innocent. Purport. For a woman, both the husband and the father are equally worshipable. The husband is the protector of a woman during her youthful life, whereas the father is her protector during her childhood. Thus both are worshipable, but especially the father, because he is the giver of the body. Lord Shiva reminded Sati, your father is undoubtedly worshipable, even more than I am. But take care, for although he is the giver of your body, he may also be the taker of your body, because when you see your father, because of your association with me, he may insult you. An insult from a relative is worse than death, especially when one is well situated. Om Agyana Timaranda Shoginanjana Savakaya Chakshumaritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurube Namaha. So there's a kind of a prediction here, a premonition that this will not go well. Shiva is not he's advising Sati, don't go, but he's not like locking her up or prohibiting her. But he's saying, don't do this. Please don't do this. There's an interesting mutual respect in this relationship, this dynamic. And Sati, by her complaints and arguments and behaviors indicating that she's just so attached to going to this social affair. And it's certainly true that the feminine psychology enters into this, that a daughter would not expect abusive or neglectful or even hateful behavior from her own father. It's a terrible deviation, a terrible cruelty, as described here. It's interesting to me also that Prabhupada writes, paraphrasing Shiva, an insult from a relative is worse than death, especially when one is well situated. I could be wrong. I take that to mean that here is Sati. She's the wife of Lord Shiva, one of the principal demigods, or actually even in his own category, Shiva Tattva, quite extraordinary position, the daughter of a great progenitor. And so this kind a rebuke from her own father would be doubly, triply, and exponentially painful for her, being in such a position. Deha Krit, the giver of your body. It ends up being one of the reasons that Sati gives up her body. You gave me this body. I don't want it anymore. You're so offensive to my husband. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Maharaj, any comments here?
One thought, because we talk about this mutually respectful relationship, one reading may be that, well, he knows that she's going to do it anyway. She's already so worked up about it and so carried away by the thought of attending. My sisters will be there, my mother will be there, everybody will be there, that she's going to do it anyway. Even if you were to say no, she'd do it. So better not to prohibit her, because then that becomes offensive. We saw that in Prabhupada's activities, that on some occasions he would not prohibit a disciple from doing something because he knew the disciple would do it anyway. And then if Prabhupada had prohibited it, then disobedience would have been in a Guru Aparad. So so Prabhupada himself explained, well, he was going to do it anyway, so better I not prohibit him. So that's another possible reading there. Another point that comes to mind is we read in the Nectar of Devotion that a non-devotee or enemy of the Lord shouldn't even be seen. Shouldn't even be seen. So better for you not even to see these people, and especially your father. All right, I think that's it. Except that I think Vishwanath has a take on no, that's all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We have a couple of questions. Actually, two people ask very similar questions. Vijay Krishna Prabhu says, what is the meaning of well situated in the context of what Lord Shiva is telling to Mother Sati? And Mukesh Prabhu says, this statement that an insult is worse than death is difficult to comprehend. So then he wants to know, like Vijay Krishna Prabhu, well situated in the spiritual or material sense.
Let's see, that's in the purport, isn't it?
The end there.
Let's see. The end. Yes. An insult from a relative is worse than death, especially when one is well situated. It looks to me like this may be another way of reading the Anagasam Durvajasa Akarot Tiraha, which Prabhupada translates that he's insulted me, although I'm innocent. But the way that Prabhupada glosses or writes here suggests that it applies to Sati also. You're innocent, and your father is going to insult you. Or reading it another way, he's going to insult me, and that's an insult to you. You're half my body, so an insult. So you're well situated. You're the wife of an innocent person. So when he insults me, that's going to be an insult to you. And you'll take it that way. You'll feel insulted, and that will be painful. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sambhavitasya Chakirtir Maranada Dirichite. To be dishonored is worse than death. What is that, the beginning? I've forgotten. Anyway, Sambhavitasya Chakirtir. The Bhishma and Drona and so on, they'll all think you insignificant. They'll insult you, or you'll be insulted in the public view. So Sambhavitasya, for a person who's respectable, Prabhupada translates it, or an honorable person, a respectable person, a decent person. For such a person, dishonor is especially painful. Even a criminal doesn't like to be insulted. He thinks, why are they criticizing me? Look at what they do. No one likes to be insulted. We all have our sense of pride, but especially a person who's faultless, a person who's pure, a person who's well situated in Krishna consciousness. What is that in the Bhagavad Gita? Sadhureva samantavya, for a person who's situated as a sadhu, a devotee. It's especially painful to be insulted in this way. I'm just trying to serve Krishna and my spiritual master, and you're making me out to be a terrible person for this reason, that reason. Even Prabhupada had experience that he was, what was his fault? That he was just trying to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, and so some less experienced or less capable Vaishnavas insulted him or criticized him. So how painful that is. First of all, as Lord Shiva said, to be insulted by a relative is some flake, some Mayavadi, if a Mayavadi insults you, you feel like you can wear it as a badge of pride. If a materialist insults you, that's another pride badge. But when your own relatives insult you, when the Vaishnavas insult you, that's especially painful. So Prabhupada had to deal with that that even his own godbrothers criticized him. And what was the reason? It's because he was spreading Krishna consciousness, spreading the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. And we've read in the purport that, or in one of the purports, that Daksha criticized Lord Shiva essentially because Lord Shiva had attained a state that Daksha himself couldn't attain. Lord Shiva was in samadhi. He was absorbed in devotional trance. And Daksha was stuck here on the platform of fruitive activities and doing yagyas and enjoying the results. So he couldn't achieve the state, the exalted state of Lord Shiva. So he was envious. That's what we find here. So he criticized out of envy, even though he himself was a respectable person, a leader of the Prajapatis. He was so influenced by false pride and false prestige that he insulted such a great soul as Lord Shiva. But from Lord Shiva's side, and this kind of insult, and especially, all right, I may take the insult because I'm in an exalted position. If I'm in samadhi, then I'm not going to be affected by insults either. Let them throw their insults. Who cares? These little neophyte demigods, let them cast their ugly words. But you're going to have a hard time with it because you're a woman, because you're my wife. When they insult me, and when you know that I'm innocent, or that I'm even better than innocent, I'm absorbed in thinking of Vasudeva. When your own father insults me in that way, how painful it will be for you. First of all, you'll be pained to hear me criticized, although I'm well situated, although I'm faultless, and you'll be pained that, oh, my own father is doing this. I'm connected with this person who's bad-mouthing a sadhu. How painful that is. In Chanakya Pandit, if there's a fire in the hollow of one tree, the whole forest is devastated. So you'll feel that just as I'm connected with Lord Shiva, I'm connected with Daksha also, and how painful that connection is, because although he's my own father, he's insulting Lord Shiva. I remember seeing a photograph many, many, many years ago. There was a murder case, a case of serial murder, in which it was finally found that there was a man who had gone mad and was taking instructions from his dog to kill this person and then kill that person. And there was a photograph of outside the courtroom, and the murderer's parents were there, shielding their faces from the cameras with newspapers. How humiliating to be the parents of this madman, this murderous madman. So similarly, how painful, how humiliating to be the daughter of someone who's committing the worst of Vaishnava aparads. You've got that on one side, and on the other side, the person that he's insulting is your own husband, and that person is faultless. So how painful from from every point of view that this is going to be for you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. And Tulsi Priya says also, it's like Daksha is blaming her for being with Lord Shiva when he is the one who gave her to him in marriage.
Yes, that comes up. And that came up.
Mm.
And Daksha wants to stick it on Brahma. I didn't want to give her, but you made me do it. So how pleasing is that to hear? Again, Lord Shiva's exalted and faultless, and to hear him criticized in this way. I didn't want to give my daughter to this monkey-eyed vagabond, but what could I do? Lord Brahma forced me to do it. To hear your father speaking like that is so terrible.
Yes, Samarpana Gopa Prabhu says, Dandavat Maharaj and Vaishnavas, can you cite one of the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada where he did not instruct or prohibit to avoid Guru Aparad, as you were previously discussing?
There was some incident, maybe it was in Vrindavan, where someone wanted to divorce and marry again, or he'd already divorced and he was going to marry again. I forget which the case was. And Prabhupada didn't say anything against it because and then he commented later that, well, he was going to do it anyway. It seems to me I've heard other instances told by Shrutakirti Prabhu or Harishrai Prabhu. It wasn't the only time Prabhupada did that.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. And he also asks how to respectfully tolerate apparent or true insults from close ones and continue on with devotional relationships, as it gives great pain.
Well, one thought is that to think, how are these people my relatives? Now I've joined the Achyuta Gotra. I've joined the family of Krishna. So these people are really outsiders. They can think what they like. Who's that Madhavendra Puri? He has a prayer like that, where let these people criticize me, let those people criticize me, but I'm determined to engage myself fully in the service of Krishna. Let them say what they like. So a devotee may, if there's real hostility from family members, the devotee can adopt that point of view, that how are these people my family members? Just by some action of the illusory energy in terms of Tejo, body, Mridam, and earth, water, fire, and the other elements, there appears to be a relationship. But Asango Hiyam Purusha, I have no connection with this body or these bodily connections. So then how are they my relatives? And if they're not my relatives, then what do I care? Let them say what they like. That's one thought. Another thought is to think, so unfortunate that they're not Krishna conscious. They're bewildered by the illusory energy. And so they're saying these things. They're speaking like madmen or babbling like sea waves for lack of Krishna consciousness. So one might, although generally we're not compassionate to our parents, we're supposed to be in the lower position. But a devotee may feel even a sense of compassion, I guess we can say, for the parents, or the sincere desire that they could become Krishna conscious and not be bewildered in this way. Otherwise, whatever they say, it's just under the influence of Maya, so you don't take it as meaningful.
Samarpana Gopa Prabhu continues, but
Or, excuse me, just while I'm thinking of it, or the devotee may just want to sort of present a public, present the face to the parents. Well, you appearing like an ordinary person and not confront them with very much Krishna consciousness, because they'll just create offenses. Raghunath Das Goswami's advice: you just outwardly appear like a pound, shilling, and pence man, and be inwardly Krishna conscious. So the devotees sometimes in family association, inevitable family association, just may not present very much because they can't hear it. They can't hear it. He may wait for somebody else to give them, some other devotees can speak to them about Krishna, and they might hear, but they won't hear from me. So better I not say anything. That's another, depending on the relationship, depending on the circumstances, another thought.
Thank you. Yes, he extends his question, but I'm not sure if I understand what he's getting at. He says, what about if they are devotees in Astana?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat. It is ashrama. It is not just like parents or those who are non-devotees. They are devotees, practicing devotees.
Their devotees are what?
In our, it's like in Brahmachari ashram, or they are devotees properly, not just family members who are non-devotees.
So how to deal with insults from devotees, some members of that family? Yeah, that's worse, to be criticized by the Vaishnavas needlessly. Is how painful is that? That was Prabhupada's situation, that his own family members, not the material family members he'd left behind, but the spiritual members of the family he joined, were enviously critical of him. So how painful that is. So yeah, we have to tolerate, or from another point of view, sometimes we just pick up that, yes, I have this fault or I have that fault, and good that they've pointed it out, even if we think that it's undeserving. Well, that's good for me. Or Krishna says, Tulya nindatma samstutihi. One should be equipoised in amidst praise or blame. So if no one criticizes me, how do I get the chance to practice that? So you're doing me a favor.
Thank you, Maharaj. Tulsi Priya mentions insults foster detachment. Sri Vidura was insulted, and that was his cue to go on parikrama. He didn't linger to be served more of the same.
Also, in terms of criticism by devotees, it can remind us that although we appreciate Vaishnava association, although we value Vaishnava association above everything, the sort of superficial social association of neophyte devotees is not ultimately what we should be attached to. It's not that we want to just look good in the association of devotees, but finally we need to be very seriously engaged in the service of Krishna. But yeah, better not to have to think that way, sort of, what's the word? Minimizing the importance of other devotees. We'd rather not think like that. Better to take it on ourselves. That, even if it looks like I'm faultless, I must have done something either this time or before or they've caught me in something. They don't really know what they're talking about because they don't have enough insight. Otherwise, they would have seen my real faults. But at least they're picking up on something.
Hare Krishna. Murai Gupta Prabhu says, Krishna mentions in Bhagavatam that turning family members against a person is one of the ways he frees them from family attachment and makes the person take shelter of him and his devotees. And Tulsi Priya comments in regards to your comment, Maharaj, about posing as a pounds and shillings man. We had this verse posted on our fridge, 7:14:6 in Bhagavatam. An intelligent man in human society should make his own program of activities very simple. If there are suggestions from his friends, children, parents, brothers, or anyone else, he should externally agree, saying, yes, that is all right. But internally, he should be determined not to create a cumbersome life in which the purpose of life will not be fulfilled. Hare Krishna.
Perfect.
So we've reached our time a little bit plus, but we need some kirtan. So I was going to see if Vijay Krishna Prabhu would be willing to lead us in some kirtan.
Ekendra Prabhu, I would do it, but Panchatattva Prabhu is here.
Yes, he is. So now there's a problem.
Well, for us to solve the problem, please, I beg you on my knees, allow Panchatattva Prabhu to do it.
He's on his knees, Prabhu. What can be done?
I'm on my knees too, asking him to do it. Who is bowing lower?
Kali Yuga, the age of cumbersome life. Hare Krishna.
Okay, if you insist, I'll do it.
Oh, please do, Vijay Krishna. We'd love to hear from you. Haribol.
Haribol. Can you hear my mridanga?
Yes, very nice.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajacharya Ashtotara Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri ki jai. Ganga Mayi ki jai. Yamuna Mayi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, for the kirtan. Thank you, Maharaj, for giving us your association. Thank you, everyone, for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai,
His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj ki jai.
jai.
Samaveta Bhakta ki jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari
Guru
Bol.
Maharaj, I wanted to mention something. I spoke with Manoram over at Krishna House the other day, or at Krishna.com the other day, said the books are practically all gone. The Prabhupada's Kirtan standards are eagerly awaiting the second printing, and the demand is way beyond the supply. And for all of our guests, please get this book, Srila Prabhupada's Kirtan Standards. It's really an enlightening and revealing book about Srila Prabhupada's own standards for chanting Hare Krishna, both by his own example and by what he instructed to his disciples and what they observed. Hare Krishna.
Because there's a lot of interest in kirtan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Yeah, and Maharaj, just it's an interesting fact in Zoom that if you do a double thumbs up, you'll get fireworks going off behind you somehow.
I see.
Only the host, I think.
I didn't make that up.
Right.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Oh my
Krishna.
goodness.
It's Friday night. What can be done?
Jai Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much.
Jai, jai, jai.